Morning, everybody. My name's Chad. I'm one of the pastors here. I'm so excited to be together. Thankful for you this morning. Thank you also for those of you who are just considering with the Lord the financial stuff that's going on here at Pleasant Valley. As I said before, and I'll just say it again, we've been praying into this as a staff and board, and we believe that it is only the thing that the Lord is using to cause us to lean into him. I know some of you are like, you're new, maybe you haven't been here, you go somewhere else, like, what is this about? The Lord is allowing some stuff to cause us to press into him and to believe, because I know that he will handle the financial need. And what I'm asking, Lord, is what are you doing underneath the surface? And so I just want to encourage you. One of the things in my family, so a few years ago, I broke my shoulder. And so then I'm unable to do the things that I normally do. And so that means Lisa does more and the kids, and it was just beautiful to watch them step up and start to do the things that I would usually do. Same thing if Lisa gets sick. It's kind of this like all hands on deck. We all need to help, and we're a family. We're a church family. And so we're saying, let's bear this burden together in prayer. And what that means is only this, that you spend time with the Lord and you ask him, how should I respond? That's it. I don't know who gives. I don't know how much people give on purpose. I don't want to know. I want to know that you are talking to Jesus. That's it. And it could be that you speak to Jesus and he's got you plugged into another place and that he's saying, hey, maturity for you means giving to this other church that you've been a part of for a long time. Do it. Do it. The main thing is just that you interact with him and you trust him. So thank you. It's amazing how just even a couple weeks of being able to speak about those things and the Lord allowing me to come to grips with his truth. Remember, because if you heard me, I was so afraid to talk about it. And then as I leaned into it and the Lord showed me it was in his word, it's not that I'm like super bold and I want to go out and talk about it all the time, but I feel like, okay, Lord, this is your truth. It's okay to lean into these things, and you want to use these means of grace, and that's what Paul calls it. He calls it an act of grace. You want us to excel in it, in giving, and so that we can support what God is doing. So thank you for leaning into that. I'm going to pray before we get started here. Lord, thanks for your grace, Lord, to pour out your life for us. And I'm so thankful for this opportunity to be in your word, Lord, for the way that you orchestrate events that we end up together and start to spend time in your word together. And so would you meet us this morning? Or would your words pursue us? In Christ's name, amen. So 2 weeks ago, we started a book in the Old Testament called the book of Exodus. And I'll say this, I think it's a prophetic journey that we're on. Small p, because there are no capital P prophets anymore, but small p in that the Lord is using what we study in God's word to speak to our current personal situations and even corporate, and I think even what's happening in our country and what's happening in our world. If that hasn't happened to you in your own share time with Jesus, it will. Especially if you stay with it. I can't tell you how many times I open up, and I'm not like, where it's like, Lord, where should I read? Like I have a devotional that has dates, okay? Like that's how I do it. I open up to what's tomorrow, okay, so it's going to be on March 4th. What's March 4th? And I look there and there's passages of scripture to read, but I can't tell you how many times it lines up with what is going on in my own heart and what God knows I need to hear. I think this book, Exodus, is that kind of journey for us. And I've titled today, The God Who Draws Out. We left off last time with Moses, and his name means I drew him out. And you're going to see this theme throughout the book of a God who draws us out. And I want you to, even today, if you start to sense, and I'm hoping and I'm praying that the Holy Spirit would begin just this like subtle pull on your heart, that you would begin to hear and feel and sense the pursuit of the Holy Spirit in your life. Because this is his story. And as we step into Exodus, I think we're going to be hearing his voice. We're going to be on page 45 in the Bibles we provide, if you look under there. But I want to give you two verses that are in the New Testament that talk about Moses, that talk about Exodus, just to set up and frame the story before we jump into Exodus 2:11 And it's these two verses. Here's the first one, Acts 7:22. And this was my struggle because I kept thinking about Moses, and it starts here by saying he was instructed in the ways of Egypt. Okay, so let's bring that down to just layman's term. His people were out there in the mud, making bricks, getting their backs whipped, starving, struggling, wondering where God is. And what is Moses doing? Hey, try these grapes. Yes, I learned how to do this hieroglyphic today. It's pretty cool. He's being instructed in the ways of Egypt. He is living, as we would say in the South, high on the hog. Okay? He's just living it up. And outside, there are people suffering, struggling. In this next verse, Matthew 17, an event that you may have heard of when Jesus turned bright white light and was blinding to the disciples. 6 days Jesus took with him Peter, James, and John, the brother of James, and led them up to a high mountain by themselves. There he was transfigured before them. So before they could look at him, now they're like, whoa, Jesus, you're so bright. His face shone like the sun. His clothes became as white as the light. And look who's with them. Just then, there appeared before them Moses and Elijah, talking with Jesus. Whenever you see something like it in the Bible, you need to say, what are they saying? What are they talking about? Peter said to Jesus, because he's a big dork, Lord, this is so awesome. Can I make 3 tents for you and Elijah and Moses, and we could just like hang out here? This would be awesome. And if you keep reading the story, God says, shh, Peter, no. Listen, but I asked the question, what were they talking about? And if you look, and I don't have this one up there, but Luke 9:31, Luke tells the story and says, Moses and Elijah, when they were talking with Jesus, were talking about this. They were talking about Jesus' exodus. That's the word. Jesus' exodus from this world. Hint, hint, what was his exodus from this world? The cross, the crucifixion. Moses and Elijah are sitting there having this conversation. Jesus is super bright, white, shining, and they're talking about his exodus. Now, here's my problem. High on the hog, hanging out with the Egyptians, eating grapes, learning to draw hieroglyphics. Fast forward hundreds of years. Finally, Jesus is on the earth. Here's Moses, here's Elijah. All the pieces are coming together. It's not, contrary to what some would say, New Testament is, restart. Old Testament was stupid. Let's redo it. No, Jesus is saying, I'm connecting all the pieces. This story has been going from the beginning, but I have trouble connecting the distance. Because what I'm thinking about is the people suffering in between and wondering, why does it take so long? So as I am very odd when I study the Bible and think about these things, the part that God wanted me to think about, and I think was leading me to think about, was that Jesus is not bound by time or space. He is a time traveler, has no trouble moving from here. And I found this picture online of an Einstein-Rosen bridge, like somebody trying to come up with the whole black hole thing. Anybody seen Interstellar or some of those movies? And they postulate, here's what we think it would be like. But easiest illustration, and you kind of get this when people talk about time. So let's say here's Moses over here. He's in Pharaoh's house. And then in between, this distance is hundreds and hundreds of years. Now, in our minds, we think we're stuck in time. And so we think, it's been forever, God, since you have actually done anything about what's going on in my life. I'm really struggling with how long it's taking for this or this or this. And we look at it and we say, man, look at all this time. And so the Einstein-Rosen bridge, basically the hypothesis is this, that because of a black hole or something, that time could be bent like this. And to travel this long distance, time could be bent and you could go whoop, right through a black hole. And they kind of postulate that maybe it would not only be distances, but also time because of the theory of special relativity. And we were all thinking about that at breakfast anyway, right? No. But this is how my mind goes when I start thinking about, I'm looking at problems of time. And I'm seeing, and you're going to see in a minute as we start Exodus, it says one day when Moses grew up, he's going to go from the baby in the basket and he gets picked up by Pharaoh's daughter and then he grew up. And you know how long that was? 40 years. 40 years. The same guy, Stephen, would say, yeah, it took 40 years. So I have this question, and even though Jesus is able to, and he's not bound by time and space, he created time, and so no, he's not sitting around going, man, I created this thing, and I'm just so limited by it. I've boxed myself in. Why did I create time? I have to wait forever to do something. He doesn't do that. He doesn't sit around. He can do whatever he wants. He knows the beginning and the end. Scripture tells us he's the Alpha and the Omega. So if the Alpha and the Omega wants to travel anywhere on the timeline, he can do it. He's not bound by that. But my mind is stuck, and I think about things like Moses sitting in the Pharaoh's house, learning the ways of Egypt, and all the distance between before he would stand with Jesus. And I ask things like this of Jesus. Why'd you spend so many years learning from Joseph how to make tables and chairs? Just think about it for a second. There are people dying. He's come to the earth to fix our sin problem, to give us life. And just imagine Joseph saying, Jesus, come here. So you see this? This is how we plane a surface. This is how we get it to look, and this is how we measure. You want to be accurate in your measurements. You know what I mean? It's like Jesus, like maybe a little smile there. Yeah. We don't know how the whole God-man thing worked, but we know that he was fully God and fully man at every point. He was not unaware of it. And so, yeah, I know about measurement. I know about smooth surfaces, but think about it. He's making tables, he's making chairs, and all the while people are out there living and dying. Slaves are living in slavery in Egypt. Moses is in the palace, hanging out. What are you doing, God? If you can make these jumps, if you can traverse time and space, why not do it right now? I got a great idea for a situation in my life where I think you could meet this at this point. I don't know if you've ever read C.S. Lewis and the Chronicles of Narnia, beautiful children's books. If you haven't, pick them up. They're so easy to read and so wonderful. My kids love them. We were watching one of the movies that was made, and I was remembering the first one, the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. There's Peter, Edmund, Susan, and Lucy and their family, and Lucy finds a wardrobe in this old house. They had been sent away because of World War II from their parents for safety. She finds this wardrobe. She hides in it, playing hide and seek, and she's moving towards the back, and all of a sudden feels trees and snow and enters into another realm, an alternate time and space place called Narnia. So I won't give away the story of what happens in the story, but eventually they find themselves to be kings and queens in that land. They grow up, they rule, they reign. They're known as King Peter, King Edmund, Queen Lucy, Queen Susan. One day they're walking through the woods and they notice a lamppost, and they stop and they think, well, that looks familiar. They move through the woods. All of a sudden you find them tumbling back into the room. They're kids again. And they're saying, what happened? Which timeline is real? Both. Both. Our identity as those who know Jesus, seated in heavenly places, and the fact that your stomach right now is beginning to say, he better hurry up, because I'm getting hungry. We are in both. And so Jesus is able to transcend this. He is timeless. He is ageless. And then how does the scripture describe him, though? As the Ancient of Days. In that he is able to sit on these timelines and he doesn't struggle. He can never be late. He can never miss an opportunity. He does everything perfectly. And even when we can't see it, he's doing something. He's behind the scenes. He is orchestrating history. So I wanted to set that up before we open to page 45, Exodus 2, verse 11, because it's going to be not even a full sentence that 40 years are going to pass. Like half a sentence. Let's just read it. One day when Moses had grown up. Oops, 40 years. Oops, 40 years of God letting people stay as slaves. What do we do with that? Well, we keep reading, we keep trusting the character of God. He went out to his people. He looked on their burdens. He saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his people. Interesting that he wrote that. one of his people. He looked this way and that, and seeing no one, he struck down the Egyptian. He killed him and hid him in the sand. Okay, now we're talking. This is not boring. When he went out the next day, behold, two Hebrews were struggling together. He said to the man in the wrong, "Why do you strike your companion?" And this guy said, "Who made you a prince and judge over us? You gonna kill me too, buddy?" I think Moses probably let out a little Egyptian curse word right then. It's like, oh my goodness, what's gonna happen? Then Moses was afraid and thought, surely this thing is known. When Pharaoh heard of it, somebody told him he sought to kill Moses, but Moses fled from Pharaoh and stayed in the land of Midian, and he sat down by a well. Quite a jump, 40 years. But what's happening to Moses right here? How do you move from 40 years, everything's fine, till all of a sudden you're gonna kill somebody? You're gonna do something about the problem? He's been living in the palace, but I think probably there was stirrings in his heart. Maybe he's sitting up there, he's eating grapes one day, and he looks down and he sees one of hundreds of beatings, and he starts to notice, what's happening? Why do I care about this? I've been living in this house for my whole life. Why do I care? Maybe God is drawing him. Maybe God is beginning to pull him. And I think Moses is having an identity crisis. Moses is having an identity crisis. This is who I used to be, and now I'm thinking maybe I'm somebody else. There are questions that we can ask, and they're the most important questions that you ask in life. And it's this. Number one, who am I? Number two, where did I come from? Number three, what is this about? What is the meaning of this? What is the meaning of life? Number four, who makes the rules? Number five, where am I going? Who am I? Where did I come from? What is the meaning of all of this? Who makes the rules about what is right and wrong? And where am I going? Moses starts to think these things and is saying, who am I? Who is this person in me? And I just want to say this. This is God's MO, his modus operandi for how he works. If you start to not like the person you were, and the sins start to bother you, and the things that used to satisfy you don't bother you anymore, or don't satisfy you anymore, and you feel pulled and you feel drawn, that is Jesus. That is him coming after you. And this story, and his zeal to do the right thing here, he stirred, I don't know who I am, and so I'm going to go out and kill somebody. This is like, it reads like The Godfather to me. He's going to make him an offer he can't refuse. And he kills the guy. He buries him in the sand. Like, this is great stuff. It's not boring. This is like, whoa. Like, just picture Moses. Like, oh my goodness, what did I do? Like, dragging a body. You kind of see the trail. Starts digging. I mean, there's a lot of effort here to do this. A lot of people wonder, was Moses a big fat failure here? Did he just go in his own strength? A lot of commentators would say, oh yeah, he was just acting on his own. But others would say he was foreshadowing what God was about to do to Egypt as a whole. He was picking out the one, and what was he bringing? Judgment. Judgment on him. Going after the evil that was done. Either way, he's not saying the same, is he? In one moment, he moves from, I was 40 years like this, and then everything changes just like that. How did the people feel about him being their leader? No thanks. Here's a cool thing about what you see in the Old Testament, and you have to look for Jesus on every page. What do we know about Jesus? What does it say in Isaiah? He was despised and rejected. What did we learn? If you weren't here, but we were in the Gospel of John, how did the Pharisees respond to Jesus when he would try to teach? What would they say? Who do you think you are? Who do you think you are telling us what to do? It's exactly the rejection of God's appointed Redeemer, God's deliverer. The Israelites are doing it here. You're going to see this theme carried out through Scripture of rejecting God's person. Who do you think you are? God is overseeing Moses, even in his apparent failure in killing the guy and burying him in the sand, gets him where he wants to get him. out of the palace. He's on the run. He's being drawn out. He's being driven by the hand of God. Do you feel driven? It is his story, and yet it's going to be the story of Israel. Because what's God want to do with them? Pull them out, drive them out. So he does with the one what he wants to do with the many. This is a picture you see in Scripture all the time. And we find Moses from the palace sitting by a well. Let's look at verse 16. The priest of Midian had 7 daughters, and they came and drew water and filled the troughs to water their father's flock. It's like the beginning of a romantic comedy. The shepherds came and drove them away, but Moses stood up and saved them and watered their flock. And when they came home to their father Reuel, he said, "How is it that you have come home so soon today?" And they said, "An Egyptian delivered us out of the hand of the shepherds. He drew water for us. He watered the flock." And he said to his daughters, "Well, where is he? Why have you left the man? Call him that he may eat bread." Moses was content to dwell with the man. And here we go with time passing in one sentence, with like years. Moses was content to dwell with the man. He gave Moses his daughter, and then she gave birth. Holy cow, in one sentence. He goes from the palace to he's got a wife and a baby, okay? She gave birth to a son. He called his name Gershom, which pretty much says, "I'm going to call you alien." That's what it means. I like sometimes like in the Bible, I'm like even one of these kids are like, "Come on, Dad. Can I be like Tom or something? Why do you got to call me alien?" But they would do these things where they name their kids after what's happening. And so Moses is an alien in a foreign land. And so he's like, "So you're going to be alien. Alien, get over here. I got you to do some stuff for me." Sometimes the way things play out in the narratives of the Bible are fun. And I really, as I started to read this, I was thinking it reads like a romantic comedy. 7 daughters out with the flock. And here happens to be a former prince, and he's just sitting by the well. Ding. You know, you kind of see the little shine in his eye, and they're like, "Ooh, look at him." You know, they're all excited. And here come the bad shepherds, and they're like fired up, and he rises up, and you can just hear the music just building, like the soundtrack behind as he saves them, and he waters their flocks, and they come home, and they're like, "What happened?" And she says, "Dad, I'm in love. This guy's just you should just seen him," as he was like driving away those shepherds and watering the sheep. It was just beautiful. And he's like, "Shh, for sure, we're going to have a wedding today." So it's crazy stuff sometimes when you read those things. It's like, how did this happen so fast? Sure enough, though, Zipporah, she was the lucky one. But what else I see, the other things that I see in here is that God has kicked Moses out of the palace and into the wilderness. Out of the palace and into the wilderness. From Pharaoh's house, eating grapes, drawing hieroglyphics, to sitting by a well with nothing. Read between the lines. Who else left a palace and came and made himself nothing? Sunday school answer, folks. Yes. Moses is playing out this story. Moses went out into the wilderness, and in so doing becomes like Jesus, but he also is like Israel, because now he gets it. He is identifying with his people. Why? Because he has nothing. They have nothing. He knows what it's like to be without hope. He identifies with them in their suffering, their poverty, their lack of place or home, and God is preparing him to be their leader. Jesus also, by coming to earth, before he went into ministry, he goes into the wilderness for how long? 40 days. How long was Moses in the wilderness? 40 years. It's almost as if God is writing this whole book, because he is. On purpose, he is making these things happen so that we would get it. Moses is here for 40 years. He is foreshadowing the events of the ministry of Jesus. Hebrews 2 tells us about Jesus. You could say the same thing of Moses. He had to be made like his brothers in every respect so that he might become a merciful and faithful high priest and shepherd. Think about how Moses was a protector right there, and he was driving out these bad guys, and he was a shepherd. He was taking care of them. And I think we can identify with what God is doing with Moses. You may not want to, but I'll say this. There's not one person in this book that God moves in their life that he doesn't put them in the wilderness first in some way. And I'll say, somebody was asking me yesterday just about how God did things in my life and how did I know that he was moving on the stuff. And it was crazy because you want to say like the highlights of, oh yeah, did this. But you know what came to my mind right away? Suffering, wilderness, struggle. And then I look back on it. Did I like it in the moment? No. But do I see God's hand and see him shaping and moving things through sending me into that? Yes. And God is having Moses do it first. This is his second Exodus. What was his first Exodus? Onto the water in a little ark. This is his second Exodus out of Egypt into the wilderness. And guess what? There will be a third. But God is preparing him to be a leader who can take others. What's the point? Wilderness is being drawn out, driven out, God moving in your heart into a place where you don't have what you had before, where it doesn't satisfy you anymore, where you have nothing left and you're sitting by the well of your life going, well, what do I do now? And Jesus says, perfect. You're in the perfect place. Now I can do what I want to do. This is him. If you're sensing that in your life, you're going through something crazy and you're wondering, why is he taking so long? He's not taking so long. He's right in the middle of it. He's right in the middle of it. Has you exactly where he wants you. Moses is a traveler, a sojourner in a foreign land, even though his son had to bear that crazy name, alien, Gershom. 40 years. And notice this is another 40 years. Moses was in the palace for 40 years. What was happening outside? We're just making bricks here, dude. We're just making more bricks while you're up there in the palace. He leaves. How long does he stay in the wilderness? 40 more years. What's happening back in Egypt? Bricks. Making bricks. What are you doing, Lord? Are you sleeping? Let's look at the last few verses. Verse 23. Because see, while something is happening to Moses, something is happening to the people too. And things are moving like clockwork right in God's timing. During those many days, verse 23, the king of Egypt died. Yay! Wait a minute. That guy didn't have to answer for anything. We started last week saying there was a new king. He didn't know Joseph, and so he just make them work hard, make it awful for them. And now just as he died, nobody ever said anything to the guy. Why does he get to get away with it? Scripture tells us he doesn't get away with it. Scripture tells us that he will stand before the Lord. He did stand before the Lord, and what does he do? He has a judgment. He has a place where he has to answer for every act in his life. Guess what? So do you and me. And that's why with the cross, we move, if we accept Christ, we want to move that judgment day to the past, to the day when Jesus was crucified, to his resurrection. Because if you don't identify with that, then you're going to answer for yourself. But if you move it to the past by accepting Christ and what he did, then you don't stand there like this Pharaoh stood there and was like, I don't know. I don't know. And the Lord gives us what we deserve. And so you want to be standing there with Jesus stepping in front saying, this one's mine. This one's mine. So just a side note to say, he didn't get away with it. Scripture tells us he didn't get away with it. The people of Israel groaned because of their slavery. They cried out for help. Their cry for rescue from slavery came up to God. It made it through the stratosphere. God heard their groaning, and God remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob. God saw the people of Israel, and God knew. God remembered, God saw, God knew. God remembered, God saw, God knew. God is definitely on the move in your life, but sometimes you can't tell. Isn't that profound? It's not very satisfying, is it? But somebody actually, I said that in the first service, and somebody afterwards said, that was the thing that stuck with me. God is definitely on the move in your life, but sometimes you can't tell. He's not asleep. He's not waiting for you to do the perfect thing. He's moving. And they're asking maybe, Lord, why are you doing this? And I think he would say to us, you're on a need-to-know basis, and you don't need to know the details. But what you can know is that it's me. I am moving. But in the meantime, while you're down there in the mud, with your eyes not able to see everything, I'm going to draw something else out of your heart. Prayer. And specifically, prayers flung from the mud. We tend to think we need to come, into the Lord's presence, and it's got to be this okay, clear. All right, Lord, I'm going to just, Heavenly Father. Like I remember the first church I went to, this guy used to pray, and he'd pray, thrice holy God. I was like, whoa. I didn't even know thrice was a word. Prayers flung from the mud sound different. They're raw. They're in the middle of your stuff. They're hard. I don't even know if you're listening, Lord, but will you help? People crying out seems to make the difference finally. Is that how we see God? Is this him? Is this him sitting here in the library of heaven and he's got his book he's reading and what? Nah. Oh, you're serious now. It's like, no, there's just one of you. You're not really serious. I can see right through. There's all this, Is that how he works? Does he wait for one or two? Oh, no, now there's three. Okay, I guess I better listen. Listen to how zealous they are. They are really after this. Now, maybe I should respond now. Is that how God works? If he's truly God, the very definition of God, there is not one thing that you will say that he doesn't know. There's not one thing that will happen that he doesn't know that it's already going to happen. And truly, there's not one thing that's going to happen that he is not in total control of. Now, in our finite minds, we find that hard to believe. We struggle that God could actually be wise and that he knows what he's doing, because in our timetable, he seems to be late. He seems to be not showing up. And honestly, as I was thinking about preaching on this passage, I really wanted to skip to chapter 3 because that's where the burning bush happens. It's exciting. Audible voice. Ooh, burning bush. What do we got here? Mud, wilderness, rom-com, Moses getting married, naming his kid Alien. Like, it's not exciting. Prayers flung in the mud are just that. They're flung in desperation. But here's the thing, God loves it. Now, how can it work? Because God doesn't want to be your barista. He doesn't want to hear half-calf soy latte with 2 shots extra hot. He doesn't want to wear a blue hat and watch you stare at the menu forever at Culver's. Because it's so big. There's so many things up there that would be great Butterburger, Might as well get some custard. He doesn't want to do that, but we sometimes want him to be that, Lord. I pick, I pay, I take my number, I sit down, you deliver. Thank you, Lord. He doesn't want that. He wants a relationship with you. He wants to talk. He wants to hear your voice. He wants to hear your voice. But you may say, but if he's God and he already knows, isn't this just robotic? Somehow, no. Somehow, in the truth of Scripture, and this is where we have to get to a place of trusting, he is in control of everything, and nothing will happen outside of his control. He is orchestrating the events of history to bring the most people to come to know him and to bring glory to himself, and he is responding, truly responding to your prayers. He's truly listening. And as I was thinking about this, and we'll just kind of finish here with this, because I think the point is, pray. The point is to cry out. The point is to fling your prayers from the mud. But I think what he would say to us is this: if you really understood how I did things, it would kill you. It would kill you. Like, it's too much. And we're going to see that eventually in Exodus, where Moses wants to see God, and God won't even let him see the front side. He says, I'll let you see my back, but even then I'm going to have to cover you. God is the ocean, and it's an 80-foot wave. And we're saying, I would like for you to answer. And we're standing on the beach. And here comes this 80-foot wave. And for us to understand would be to stand there and take the weight of that wave on our face. It would kill us. But he says, but here's what I can do for you. I can have you stand back a little bit. And I can let this massive nature of my glory and my goodness and the way I do things, the wisdom, my ways that are higher than yours, I can let it hit the beach, and you can stand far enough back to where you'll feel this, just the mist. And in the mist, it will seem to you that I am, and commentators talk about this, that I am stooping down to answer and to respond to your prayers, and then it will seem to you like I was going, oh my goodness, thank you for reminding me. I almost forgot that you were there in slavery. It will seem like that. Now that may not help you, so let me just finish with this. And this is where kind of I found myself, a lot of times I find myself here seeing God's truth and the way he works, and you wrestle, and then you end up in a place of worship going, this is over my head, Lord, I don't understand, but I trust you. With our kids who are big now, when they were babies, as parents, we knew that their cries meant something. And Lisa was a little more in tune to this than me, but I could be like, she's crying. Pretty sure that means something. But you get pretty good at parenting, and you actually know the timing of the diaper change. You're like, you're packing. I can totally tell you're packing. Get over here, and they run. Like, when they need the diaper change. You know when they're hungry. Now, is the baby saying, hello, I have a dirty diaper. I have a rash on the right side. Will you please change me and put on some special sauce? Like, no, they don't say that, do they? They just cry. So we used to do this thing, and it's just this sweet moment between when you're in like a good mood. But with your babies, when they're tiny, they're just tiny. They can't say anything. They can't even see yet, really. It's just a blur. They can hear your voice, and you're changing them, and they start crying as you're trying to change them, and you'd say something like this. Well, tell me about it. Oh, yes. Are you hungry? Is that what's going on? You tell me about it. You just tell me. That must be awful. We just need to take care of that. Now, all along, were we always going to change their diaper? Yes. Were we always going to feed them? Yes. We're going to take care of them no matter what. We knew what we were going to do. But there's this beautiful relationship happening between parent and child where I love those cries. I love that when they would cry and they'd finally settle down. Thank you. Please now go back to sleep so I can go to sleep. But that's my best take on this passage that says God remembered. He finally got up and did something. No, he knew. He saw. Tells us that. Moses says, God knew, God saw. He's remembering his covenant because he's good, because his plan is in play. He's not going to forget, but in his infinite wisdom, he is completely in charge, and he writes himself a role in the play called humanity. As we said last time, he owns the playhouse, folks. He wrote the play. He knows the end. But every once in a while, he steps out on stage. Not because I should do this, it'd be important, because he loves it. He loves to hear your voice. I'm had the worship team come up. I'm going to just say this as we kind of go to the table here. He is working behind the scenes. You think time is just so long. God is taking too long. He can traverse time and space in an instant. But what he's doing in your life is right on time. He's drawing you out. He is driving you possibly into the wilderness. Why? Because he loves you. Loves to hear your voice. Wants relationship with you. He's committed to you. Your thoughts, your words, your cries, your voice are precious to him. And he invites us not into just a legal agreement where he won't send us to hell. He invites us into family because we are destined for hell without him. It's very different. He wants you restored as his son, as his daughter. Lord, we love you. We thank you, God, just I'm so thankful for truths that are hard to understand, and Lord, that get me to lean in and get me to say, God, you're amazing. Your ways are so much higher than mine. And I'm so thankful that you've drawn near. As we come to the table, Lord, I pray that you would minister to us. And Lord, that we would connect with your heart and with the truth of your cross, the body and the blood of Jesus, what it has accomplished for us, your resurrection. We pray you minister to us now. In Christ's name, amen. I'll just say this, for those who have accepted Jesus, you have moved your judgment to the past and not the future, the table is for you today. But it is not to say, for those of you who have not accepted Jesus, that you are not invited. You're invited. He wants you at the table. Love to speak with you afterwards. I'm sure there's probably a friend that you know also that might want to speak or pray with you to get you restored and in communion with Jesus. But for those that are taking today, remember that there are two, and we'll partake together.